This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony. It may be hard to believe these days when Vivaldi's Four Seasons seems to be all around us, but there was a period of about 200 years when only the deepest scholars of the Baroque era had even heard of it, let alone heard it. We're still not sure exactly when Vivaldi wrote these four concertos, but they were first published in Amsterdam in 1725 as part of a collection called Il Cimento dell'Armonia e dell'Invenzione, the trial of harmony and invention. After Vivaldi's death in 1741, he and the concertos were almost completely forgotten until the mid-20th century. It was actually the revival of interest in Bach's music that brought Vivaldi back from obscurity. Bach had transcribed several of Vivaldi's concertos for himself to play on the harpsichord, and people started to wonder who was this Antonio Vivaldi. But it was the age of recordings that made his name with the general public. There were a couple of limited release recordings of the Four Seasons in Italy and France in the 1930s and 40s, but the disc that really brought Vivaldi's music into the mainstream was Louis Kaufmann's 1948 LP, which won the French Grand Prix du Disque in 1950. It was so popular and so influential that it was also elected to the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2002, and in 2003 it was selected for the National Recording Registry in the Library of Congress. The Four Seasons was now a part of our popular culture, and after it was used in the 1981 movie of the same name, it was a certified hit. The concertos that make up the Four Seasons are just four of the over 500 concertos that Vivaldi wrote. Over 200 of them were for violin, which was his own instrument. What made these concertos stand out, even in his own time, were the special effects that he wrote into the music. Composers in Vivaldi's time were bound by very firm rules: how to structure a piece, how to develop a melody or harmonies, how far away from the home key you could travel. Vivaldi was famous for his ability to paint amazing sound pictures while staying within these rules, or while bending them just enough for his effects to work. The first edition of the Four Seasons included written descriptions of the sonic pictures Vivaldi was painting. The poems were most likely written by Vivaldi himself, and while the orchestra sets the general mood of each season, the soloist is given specific episodes to play out. The poems tell the violinist exactly when the zephyrs blow, the birds sing, the dogs bark, and the pedestrian slips on the ice. The set begins with spring, the season of renewal. Springtime is upon us, Vivaldi writes. The birds celebrate her return with festive song, and murmuring streams are softly caressed by the breezes. Thunderstorms, those heralds of spring, roar, casting their dark mantle over heaven. Then they die away to silence, and the birds take up their charming songs once more. In the slow movement, Vivaldi says, "On the flower-strewn meadow, with leafy branches rustling overhead, the goatherd sleeps, his faithful dog beside him." The bump, bump in the violins is the dog barking, probably at a wayward sheep. In the finale, led by the festive sound of rustic bagpipes, nymphs and shepherds lightly dance beneath the brilliant canopy of spring. The second concerto brings us to summer. Vivaldi writes, "In the harsh season, scorched by the sun, languish man and flock, and the pine is set afire." The cuckoo begins to call. And soon after, the turtle dove and the goldfinch are heard singing. Zephyr sweetly blows, but Boreas suddenly enters into a contest with its neighbor. And the little shepherd weeps, for he fears the awesome threatening storm and his fate. To his tired limbs, rest is denied by the fear of lightning, awesome thunder, and the furious swarm of flies and hornets. Alas, his fears are justified. The sky is filled with thunder and lightning, and hail cuts down the proud grain. Autumn is a little cheerier, at least at first. The peasant celebrates with song and dance the harvest safely gathered in. The cup of Bacchus flows freely, and many find their relief in deep slumber. The singing and the dancing die away. As cooling breezes fan the pleasant air, inviting all to sleep without a care. In the finale, Vivaldi writes, "The hunters emerge at dawn, ready for the chase." With horns and dogs and cries. Their quarry flees while they give chase. Terrified and wounded, the prey struggles on, but harried dies. Finally, winter. Vivaldi's poem brings a chill. Shivering, frozen mid the frosty snow in biting, stinging winds. Running to and fro to stamp one's icy feet, teeth chattering in the bitter chill. The slow movement has become a Christmas favorite, to rest contentedly beside the hearth while those outside are drenched by pouring rain. And finally, we tread the icy path slowly and cautiously for fear of tripping and falling. Then turn abruptly, slip, crash on the ground, and rising, hasten on across the ice, lest it crack up. We feel the chill north winds course through the home despite the locked and bolted doors. This is winter. Which nonetheless brings its own delights. This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony.